Niccolo Machiavelli. Niccolo di Bernardo di Machiavelli, 3rd of May 1469 to the 21st of June 1527, was a Florentine diplomat, author, philosopher and historian who lived during the Renaissance. He is best known for his political treatise, The Prince, written around 1513 but not published until 1532, 5 years after his death. He has often been called the father of modern political philosophy and political science. For many years he served as a senior official in the Florentine Republic with responsibilities in diplomatic and military affairs. He wrote comedies, carnival songs and poetry. His personal correspondence is also important to historians and scholars of Italian correspondence. He worked as secretary to the Second Chancery of the Republic of Florence from 1498 to 1512, when the Medici were out of power. After his death, Machiavelli's name came to evoke unscrupulous acts of the sort he advised most famously in his work, The Prince. He claimed that his experience and reading of history showed him that politics has always been played with deception, treachery, and crime. He also notably said that a ruler who is establishing a kingdom or a republic and is criticized for his deeds, including violence, should be excused when the intention and the result are beneficial to him. Machiavelli's Prince has been surrounded by controversy since it was published. Some consider it to be a straightforward description of political reality. Others view The Prince as a manual teaching would-be tyrants how they should seize and maintain power. Even into recent times, some scholars, such as Leo Strauss, have restated the traditional opinion that Machiavelli was a teacher of evil. Even though Machiavelli has become most famous for his work on principalities, scholars also give attention to the exhortations in his other works of political philosophy. While less well known than The Prince, the Discourses of Levi, composed 1517 or thereabouts, has been said to have paved the way for modern republicanism. His works were a major influence on Enlightenment authors who revived interest in classical republicanism, such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau and James Harrington. Machiavelli's political realism has continued to influence generations of academics and politicians, including Hannah Arendt and Otto von Bismarck. The Prince, Machiavelli. Niccolo Machiavelli's dedication to Lorenzo di Medici the Magnificent. Usually those who wish to gain the favour of a prince approach him with those things which they themselves hold most dear, or which they have seen delight him most. And so we frequently find princes presented with horses, arms, cloth of gold, precious stones, and similar ornaments worthy of their dignity. I therefore, now that I wish to present your excellency with some token of my service to you, have found nothing among my possessions which is more dear to me and which I value more than an understanding of the actions of great men, acquired by me from a long experience of current affairs and an assiduous study of the ancients. And it is this, deeply considered and examined over a long period, and now condensed into one small volume, which I send to your excellency. And although I judge this work unworthy to come into the presence of your excellency, I do trust that your benignity may make it acceptable, bearing in mind that I could not have given you a greater gift than the means of appreciating in a short space of time everything that I, during so many years and through so many hardships and dangers, have experienced and come to understand. This is a work which I have not embellished or crammed with rhetorical flourishes, or with splendid and high-sounding words, or with any of those extrinsic ornaments or decorations with which so many others are accustomed to garnish their writings. My wish has been that either my work should not be admired at all, or else that the variety of the material in it and the importance of its subject matter alone would make it acceptable. Moreover, I should not like it to be thought presumptuous of a man of low and humble condition to dare to discuss and direct the actions of princes. No, just as those who wish to draw landscapes place themselves low down on a plain in order to examine the nature of hills and high places, and to examine the lowlands place themselves high up in the hills, so likewise, in order to understand properly the nature of the populace, one must be a prince. And to understand properly the nature of a prince, one must be a commoner. Be pleased to accept then, Your Excellency, this tiny gift in the spirit in which I send it. If you read it and examine it diligently, you will perceive that it reveals my greatest desire, which is that you will rise to that greatness which your status and your other qualities promise. And should Your Excellency, from the height of your eminence, happen to turn your eyes at times to these low places, you will realize how much I suffer, continually and undeservedly, from the malignity of fortune. 1. What kinds of principality there are and how they are acquired. All states, all governments, past and present, are or have been either republics or principalities. Principalities are either hereditary, where the family of their ruler goes back a long way, or they are recently established. The ones established recently are either completely new, like Milan under Francesco Sforza, or they are additions to the hereditary state of the prince who acquires them, as the King of Spain acquired the Kingdom of Naples. The states acquired in this way are either accustomed to living under a prince or used to being free, and they are acquired by another's arms, or by one's own, or by chance, or by intelligence. Two, hereditary principalities. I shall leave any discussion of republics to one side, since I have discussed them at length elsewhere, turning instead to principalities, filling in the outline given above, and discussing how principalities may be governed and preserved. It is my opinion that it is less difficult to preserve a state which is hereditary and accustomed to the family of their prince than one which is recently established. It is enough not to neglect the constitutional arrangements made by one's predecessors, and then adapt one's conduct to circumstances as they arise. In this way, if a prince is reasonably capable, he will always preserve his state unless some extraordinary and excessive force deprives him of it. And if he should be deprived of it, he will regain it whenever the usurper meets with any unfavourable circumstances. We have in Italy the example of the Duke of Ferrara, who was able to resist the attacks of the Venetians in 1484 and those of Pope Julius in 1510, simply because his family had been established in that state for generations. The hereditary prince has fewer reasons and less necessity to give offence to his subjects. He is therefore more loved. If he has no egregious vices to make him hated, it naturally follows that his subjects wish him well. Since change always leads to more change, the reasons for any innovations which have been made and even the memory of them have been lost in the course of time and with the continuation of the same power. Why the kingdom of Darius, which Alexander had conquered, did not rebel against his successors after Alexander's death. Considering the difficulties of holding on to newly acquired territory, one might wonder how it was that when Alexander the Great became Lord of Asia within a few years and died after he had scarcely had time to occupy it, and it would have seemed logical for the whole state to rebel, his successors did nevertheless hold on to it, and the only difficulties they had in doing so were those which they caused among themselves by their own ambition. I reply that all the principalities which come to mind are governed in one of two ways, either by a prince and his servants who, as his ministers and through his grace and favour, help to govern the realm, or by a prince with barons who, not by the prince's favour but by heredity, have that status. Such barons have their own estates and their own subjects who recognise them as their lords and have a natural affection for them. Those states which are governed by a prince and his ministers hold their prince in higher esteem, since in all the land there is no one who recognises any other superior. And if they do obey anyone else, it is as his minister and official, and they have no particular affection for him. How cities or principalities should be governed when they lived by their own laws before they were occupied. As has been said, when those states which have been gained are accustomed to living under their own laws and at liberty, there are three ways of holding on to them. The first, to raze them to the ground. The second, to go and live there oneself. The third, to let them live under their own laws, extracting tribute from them and creating among them an oligarchy which will keep them well disposed towards you. This is because that regime, having been created by the conquering prince, knows that it cannot survive without his friendship and power, and so has to do everything it can to support him. And a city accustomed to living in freedom is more easily held on to by means of its own citizens than by any other method. if one does wish to preserve it intact. Seven, new principalities which are won by the arms of others and with the help of fortune. They who, starting as private citizens, become princes merely by good fortune, achieve that status with little effort, but keep it only with a great deal of effort. They meet no difficulties along the way. Indeed, they fly along it. All their difficulties begin once they are in power. These are such men as are granted a state either for money or by the grace and favour of him who grants it. Eight, those who have gained principalities through wickedness. It is possible for a private citizen to become a prince by two more ways which cannot be attributed entirely either to fortune or to ability, and I do not want to leave these unmentioned, even though it will be possible to discuss one of them more thoroughly in a treatise on republics. These two ways are when the principality is won by wicked and detestable means, or when a private citizen becomes the prince of his native land by the favour of others. The first way can be shown by two examples, one ancient and one modern, without going further into the merits of this procedure, since I think they will suffice for anyone who has to imitate them. Agathocles the Sicilian was not only a private citizen, but one of base and humble status, and yet he became king of Syracuse. He was the son of a potter, and he lived wickedly throughout his life. Nevertheless, his wickedness was accompanied by such strength of mind and body that when he became a soldier, he rose through the ranks to become military commander of Syracuse. Once he was established in that position, he determined to become prince and to hold with violence and without any obligation to anyone else what had been conceded to him by general consent. Then, having come to an agreement with Hamilcar the Carthaginian, who was waging war in Sicily at the time, he brought together one morning the people and the Senate of Syracuse, as if there were something concerning the Republic which he wanted discussed. At a given signal, he ordered his soldiers to kill all the senators and the wealthiest of the people, and once they were killed, he seized and kept control of that city without any civil conflict. And although he was twice defeated by the Carthaginians and even eventually besieged, he was not only able to defend his city, but leaving a part of his forces to withstand the siege, he attacked Africa with the rest, and in a short space of time raised the siege of Syracuse and reduced the Carthaginians to straits. they were obliged to come to an agreement with him and be content with the possession of Africa while they left him with Sicily. Nine, civil principalities. But to come to the second way of obtaining a principality, by which a private citizen, not through wickedness or with any intolerable violence, but with the support of his fellow citizens, becomes the ruler of his native city. This may be called a civil principality, and achieving it does not depend entirely on ability or luck, but on a cunning appropriate to the occasion. I assert that one gains such a principality with the favour either of the people or of the magnates. That these two factions are to be found in every city arises from the fact that the people do not wish to be commanded or oppressed by the magnates, and the magnates do wish to command and oppress the people. And from these two opposed tendencies comes one of three results: a principality, liberty, or anarchy. Ecclesiastical principalities. Now only ecclesiastical principalities remain to be discussed. All the difficulties with them occur before they are possessed. They are required either with skill or good luck, and they are kept without either of those qualities. This is because they are sustained by the age-old institutions of religion, which are so strong and of such a nature that they keep their princes in power, whatever their actions and however they live. They alone have states and do not defend them. They alone have subjects and do not govern them. Their states, because they are not defended, are not taken from them, and their subjects, because they are not governed, are unconcerned and cannot turn against them. Indeed, do not dream of it. Only these principalities, therefore, are safe and happy ones. But as they are governed by higher motives, to which the human mind cannot rise, I shall not discuss them. Since they are exalted and maintained by God, it would be a presumptuous and rash man who would discuss them. When evening comes, I go back home and go to my study. On the threshold, I take off my work clothes, covered in mud and filth, and I put on the clothes an ambassador would wear. Decently dressed, I enter the ancient courts of rulers who have long since died. There, I am warmly welcomed, and I feed on the only food I find nourishing and was born to savour. I'm not ashamed to talk to them and ask them to explain their actions, and they, out of kindness, answer me. 4 hours go by without my feeling any anxiety. I forget every worry. I am no longer afraid of poverty or frightened of death. I live entirely through them.